over the other?
I think both of those are fine with me.
I really don't have a preference. I'm pretty casual with it. Usually autistic person because I feel like it just keeps my identity.
What does having autism entail?
And it's more of just a social disorder. I don't get a lot of social cues. There'll be times where for example, direct eye contact is not the greatest thing for me, but I wouldn't be like not listening. I like to multitask. I like to do things like that.
So it's almost like your brain's running too fast and it wants to see other things?
Yes. I know socially when you're talking to someone you have to look at someone directly, but
that doesn't come naturally.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Autism, or autism spectrum disorder, is a complex neurodevelopmental disorder that may include impairments in social interaction, developmental language, and communication skills, along with sensory sensitivities. Originally described as a form of childhood schizophrenia and the result of cold parenting, the definition of autism has majorly evolved over the last 6 decades as people have begun to understand autism more. My name's Anthony Padilla. And today I'm going to be sitting down with people on the autism spectrum to learn the truth behind this often overlooked and misunderstood disorder. Should autism be accepted as a simple difference rather than a disorder? Or should society be doing everything in its power to discover a cure for this neurodivergence that affects such a vast amount of the population? Do those on the spectrum feel blessed to have the ability to view the world in a truly unique and heightened way that neurotypical or allistic people could never imagine? Or is being on the spectrum an immense hindrance they wish they could get rid of in order to perceive the world like everyone else? Do autistic people go through life proud of their disorder? Or do they hide in the shadows of society, overwhelmed with immense guilt and shame surrounding the hand they were dealt? Hi, Aniela. Hey, Richard. Hi, Jasmine.
Hi.
Thank you so much for coming out and teaching me about the wondrous world of autism.
Thank you for having me.
So what do you consider yourself? Autistic, someone with autism or on the spectrum?
I consider myself autistic.
I'm autistic person. Most of the time, for those that are a bit more familiar, I like to be on the spectrum.
I like to say that I have autism because it's more of just the whole, it's not me and it's just something that I have. I don't want it to rule me.
When I announced I was going to do this video, there was a lot of people that were saying that I should refer to autistic people as people with autism and not autistic people. Is there one that you prefer over the other?
I think both of those are fine with me.
I really don't have a preference. I'm pretty casual with it. Usually autistic person because I feel like it just keeps my identity.
What does having autism entail?
And it's more of just a social disorder. I don't get a lot of social cues. There'll be times where for example, direct eye contact is not the greatest thing for me, but I wouldn't be like not listening. I like to multitask. I like to do things like that.
So it's almost like your brain's running too fast and it wants to see other things?
Yes. I know socially when you're talking to someone you have to look at someone directly, but that doesn't come naturally. Yeah, it's not easy.
I think being autistic means you have more hurdles to go. Bigger hurdles, more hurdles. Everything's a bit more difficult.
So everything is just a track with a bunch of hurdles in the way and you're constantly trying to jump over them.
Exactly.
Being autistic is a different way of thinking. Our brains work differently than the average human being, like the way we process things and experience things. For example, we could get really interested in things that other people wouldn't typically be interested in, like math or chemistry or art, and we get super focused on those.
Before we learn more about the wondrous world of autism, I just wanted to introduce you to the newest addition to our set. This was meticulously hand-painted by Rihanna Robles. She did an incredible job, looking sexy if I do say so myself. Let's give a huge round of applause to Rihanna Robles for this amazing job. This one's for you. Now back to learning about the wondrous world of autism. Do you consider autism to be a hindrance in your day-to-day life?
I used to think it was, but now I think it's an advantage because I coped with my autism by social isolation, and that gave me the opportunity to get better at the things that I like to do. For example, painting and riding a bike, because I can do those things by myself. And they treat me like I'm not as good as them or not as smart as they are, but
Yeah.
I feel like I'm a normal person sometimes.
I think I used to, but when adapting, I've now thought of it as a positive thing because I wouldn't be who I am.
It used to be a hindrance when I was a little kid. Now it's more of just another thing, another extension.
Just another trait that you have.
Exactly, yeah.
So there's a spectrum with autism. Can you describe what that spectrum is?
I only know that I'm high functioning autism.
How does having autism affect your day-to-day life?
Well, I'm seemingly normal on the outside, but on the inside, I'm different than the average person, and I get bullied from it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, even in adulthood.
What specifically do people bully you for?
Usually it's the way that I talk or look around. When I was a kid, I got bullied for everything. The way that I dress, and well, there's this one math teacher who used to get so mad at me when I wouldn't do my homework. But I was just a kid. I didn't realize how important homework was.
Yeah.
And so you'd have the other students make sure that I wouldn't be able to play with them during recess. And so they would trip me with the jump rope, and
Wait, who would trip you with a jump rope?
the student that the teacher asked to watch over me to make sure that I wouldn't have a recess
Wait, a teacher?
for not doing homework.
A teacher told a kid to make sure you were miserable during recess.
Yeah, I
Oh
felt like
my.
the world was against me just
Yeah, that definitely.
for existing.
I would feel like that too. Absolutely, that's tough.
I think about it every single day. That's why I remember it like it was yesterday. And I thought there was nothing wrong with me. And then when I switched schools and they still bullied me at the other school, I was like,
Yeah.
there's something wrong with me now. What's wrong with me? I was almost 14 years old when they found out.
Yeah.
They had been testing me for ADD and it kept coming out negative. And all I remember as a kid was they kept pulling me out of classes to test me on stuff. And I'm like, why are they doing this to me?
Yeah.
I just went into the office and he asked social questions.
Yeah.
Like, how do I walk into a room and feel like everybody's staring at me? Or, yeah, he just watched my behavior a little bit when I was talking. And after an hour, she turned to my mom and said, well, Mom, she has autism. And I was like, oh, and then she started bawling her eyes out.
Was she happy or sad?
She was heartbroken because she felt like she treated me wrong all these years. And my dad, too. My dad was crying.
Oh, so they.
Yeah.
How did they treat you? Did they treat you like you had?
I don't know. I thought they were pretty nice with me. I don't know why they're. Yeah.
I personally wasn't cognitive about it until like I was much later into my life, probably like around 14 to 15, when I
Oh,
was
yeah.
able to actually understand that I'm autistic or I have autism. But in terms of like parental and family, I didn't speak till I was 4. I went to doctors and all that kind of stuff, and they told them that I was diagnosed with autism.
What was that like when you found out?
When I found out, I couldn't comprehend it. I just didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what that means, because like it's not like I know what it means to be normal or anything.
You're like, what do you mean I have something? I'm just me, and I've always been like this.
I don't see anything wrong with me at all. Like when I was growing up, I had an aid.
Yeah.
So I thought it was just everyone had an aid.
Right. You didn't notice that other people did not have AIDS?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, I didn't. That's not what I meant.
I'm
I'm gonna go ahead and cancel myself right now. Can you explain what the sensory sensitivities with autism are?
For me, it's mostly sounds,
Yeah.
like not loud noises, but someone talking on the phone in the room next to me, or the dog barking up the street, or maybe my neighbors hammering a table or something.
So it's less like physical sensory stuff. It's more just like a
Yeah.
mental,
Yeah.
like you're fixating on certain details.
Yeah, exactly, that too.
It sounds a lot like, and I'm not saying it's the exact same thing, but it sounds a lot like when I'm having a panic attack. And
I get those seriously.
You get those too?
Yeah,
And you focus on one thing and you feel like it's just overwhelming.
yeah. I
Yeah.
get that 24 hours a day.
You feel like you're having a panic attack 24 hours a day?
Well, sometimes it's worse than that. Sometimes I actually faint, and that's way too frequent.
Whoa. You'll faint from the anxiety that you feel.
Yeah.
Do you go through life proud of your autism, or do you kind of keep it more of a secret?
I mean, I guess, well, for me personally, because I'm higher functioning, actually most people won't even recognize me that I'm on the spectrum. I remember when I first was coming out on Facebook, a lot of the comments I would get, they were saying, I never knew, but I'm so great to hear your story, and like,
Yeah.
it's like inspiring to see like those hurdles that you went through. I would never have believed you, because it's an invisible disorder. So it's really hard to tell unless you're actually like get to know the person.
At first, I was ashamed about it. I tried to keep it hidden. I even tried to convince myself that I wasn't autistic, but now I'm a self-advocate for it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to help other people that have it.
Do you ever feel like people underestimate what you're capable of because you're on the spectrum?
Yeah, yeah. They underestimate intelligence and capability and even your ability to play sports and drive, but
Oh, really?
I feel like I'm a good athlete in some ways.
So people will say like, wow, you can drive? You're autistic? I didn't know you could
Yeah,
drive?
like, why do you have your license? You have autism. It's like, I'm not blind.
How do you think people without autism should interact with people who are on the spectrum?
Treat us normally. I keep using normal, I'm sorry. Treat us
Like you would anyone else?
yeah, pretty much. Like,
Yeah.
treat us like how you would treat anyone else. Be aware that the fact that we do have a mental disability,
Yeah.
that we do have autism, but don't be changing the way you speak, the way you
Yeah.
act. Honestly speaking, you're one of the more personal, casual people when it comes to talking to me when it comes to
Oh.
it. And that's good. Because
really?
even though you're addressing the fact that I have autism,
Yeah.
you're not like changing anything. You're not changing the way you act. I've seen other videos with you in it and you're the same person. The way you talk to other people versus me.
Do you find that some people will just automatically change the way they talk with you?
That some people, yeah.
I'm fine with really bubbly people because
Yeah.
I feel welcomed. Of
course.
Even though I seem unapproachable.
No, you're not unapproachable.
I'm glad to hear that.
I didn't find that at least. The only difference that I see is there's less eye contact, but that doesn't
okay.
that doesn't bother me. Especially
Okay.
because I understand what it is that, you know, the way that you perceive the world is a little bit different.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts regarding the idea that some people have that autism is caused by vaccination?
I hate it.
Yeah?
I hate it. Like, I don't like using that word because I've been taught by my mother not to say the word hate, but I
Yeah,
hate, I
that's
hate,
the one thing you hate in life.
It's based on a study that has no factual evidence to it, and a lot of the doctors retracted their claims.
Yeah.
And on top of that, first of all, even if it did cause autism, why is having autism worse than having like polio?
That's true. People are like, I'd rather my kid be dying of a disease.
Yeah, I mean, I may be autistic, but at least I'm not dying.
Cynthia Wagner wants to know what you think society could be doing to better serve people with autism.
It's okay if you can't understand it. I'm not expecting you to understand 100% of everything that goes down with autism, but at least have an open mind and understand that yes, it exists. It's not wrong. I have it, other people have it too. So just be mindful that it exists.
What's something you wish you could say to everyone who doesn't understand autism and maybe doesn't want to take the time to understand autistic people?
Autism is not an excuse to misbehave. It's not a learning disability. It's not social anxiety. It's simply a different way of thinking and a different way of experiencing the world.
I actually have a parting gift for you, Best Interviewer shirt for you. You can get that at padildoshop.com, but for you, that is free.
Thank you.
Subscribe to Anthony Padilla, please. Like seriously, please. Like,
Yeah,
he
please.
brought a bunch of people to talk about autism. Like, I don't see that on normal YouTube now.
Aw, thanks, man. All right, you got 5 seconds to shout out or promote anything you want directly into camera. Go.
You can find me at Facebook or Instagram at Daniela Fields. I'm very boring. It's just my regular name.
I'm in a nonprofit documentary, and you can check out the website at autismgoestocollege.org.
My name is Robot Richie on everywhere. Robot Richie, one word, on YouTube and Instagram.
Thank you so much, Jasmine.
Thank
I
you.
feel like I understand the wondrous world of autism just a little bit more. Thank you. After spending the day with these autistic people, I've come to realize just how much we could learn from the way they perceive the world. Shouldn't we be doing more to spread awareness and education on disorders like autism so we can understand and appreciate those who are different from the perceived norm in our society? See you later. Bye, guys.
Press a like.
Ooh, gee.
It's all good.
Sorry.
Is that Siri?
No, it's Bixby. It's terrible. That comes on like out of nowhere sometimes. It even happens when I'm at work. And
These are what we really have to be afraid of for taking over the world. We're in trouble.
they're already taking over the world.
Morticians. Are they really twisted people with morbid fascinations of death who fantasize about handling the deceased? I'm Anthony Padilla, and I'm gonna find out the truth from morticians themselves. Hello, Victor.
Well, hello.
Beyonce Virgo. Hi. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. Visit betterhelp.com/Padilla because sometimes existing is exhausting. You are a mortician.
I am.
What does that entail?
The preparation and preservation of the deceased body.
Hard stop. The end.
The end.
That's what it is.
I like to think it's not my defining characteristic.
Right.
It
You're not Victor the mortician?
I mean, probably to a good chunk of the internet I
Oh.
am. But in real life, it is what I do to make a living.
Yeah.
And a mortician is a really beautiful job.
Why is it beautiful?
It's kind of two jobs in one in a lot of ways. You have the body preparation aspect that everybody
Yeah.
gets all hyped about on the web. But then you also have the kind of counseling the family, event planning, empathetic part that's also very cool too.
So what is it that sparks your curiosity?
Really just like trauma,
Emotional or blunt force trauma?
blunt force trauma.
Literally.
Yeah, like I was really curious about like how decedents would look after maybe a bad car accident or a motorcycle accident, and what went into preparing them so that their family can see them from one last time. And that was really what got me into it.
I mean, like you could have just done a Google search, but you decided I need to see it.
That
with
wasn't
my own eyes.
enough. That wasn't
Really?
enough.
When people find out that you're a mortician, do they ask a lot of questions?
Oh my God. Oh, the first question that I absolutely hate is like, well, do they stand up?
They think that you're Frankenstein.
I think so. I've never in all of my years seen even a dead person move.
What do people think that you're doing in there?
I think it's Hollywood though. I think Hollywood really plays a big part in what people think preparation of the dead is like. I don't know.
So you're saying TV is rotting our brains.
Mm-hmm.
Do you not have any fun at work?
You try to make the best of it, but sometimes the things you see are kind of heavy.
It does hit you hard. It is emotional. You're not entirely emotionally detached.
I'm not, but you do have to be desensitized to a certain extent to make it through.
Do you consciously choose like, okay, turn off the emotion, I'm gonna do my work?
Sometimes it depends. Children, absolutely. Babies, absolutely.
I
I'm
didn't
like,
even think of that.
yeah, okay. It's sad. We gotta get through this though, and I get through. But sometimes it is a little. Some days are heavier than others.
How disfigured could someone be where you would allow or be okay with the family seeing? Is there a cutoff? Like, where is that cutoff of like, I know I can repair it?
Okay, I don't know. Because everything is different, right?
Yeah.
Like if you have someone who's died in a fire, there's not really a whole lot you can do.
Yeah.
So that's like really hard. I had a car accident some years ago where a gentleman was split from at the top of his nose all the way to the back of his head.
Oh my God.
And then was autopsied after that. So that means they've taken off the skull cap, they've opened everything up. And that was really, you know, you would look at that and you'd say, this is not part, you want to throw in the towel, right? You want to say, like, close casket, that just sounds easier for me. But then you realize like, but the family could be better served. So then you spend 3 hours with a tiny needle, and what I ended up using was nylon dental floss. And I made like 300 stitches between here and there, tiny little sutures. And then once I had it closed off and they were embalmed, then I like covered over it with mortuary wax and kind of stippled and painted. So then by the time of the funeral, they could not tell where it was. They couldn't tell where the skin was split. And I think that's kind of a mercy to the parents a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Because then like they don't have to think about the head being split from here to there. They just have to know, oh, it looked really, really bad at the crash site, but when I saw him, it was fine.
So what does an average day look like for you?
I get in. I check in people that have come in overnight.
And people that are alive?
People that are deceased.
Oh.
I guess I do have to make that distinction because I'm like, yeah, people. I check in people.
Well, also sometimes people, when the person's dead, they start referring to them as a body or something like that. It's like, I always wondered, where's the distinction? Some people are like, oh, person, body, person, but they're still a person.
You know what? I think people on the outside do that. Because when I'm at work, I'm like, we got to get my lady, this lady, my guy, or Miss So-and-so, Mr. So-and-so. I try to maintain that level of humility, even
Right.
if they are deceased.
They still have an identity that isn't just as
Absolutely.
an object.
Absolutely.
Just, is it better to get to it right away?
Practically, yes. So when someone dies, you're dealing with all sorts of conditions, right? The minute someone dies, their body starts breaking down. So the first step is generally just doing intake. So just looking over the person, making sure you acknowledge any issues they might have.
Are you like taking notes?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I have an embalming report where I'll take notes. So you're looking for things like lacerations or bed sores or bruising, other things that might look unseemly when you're preparing a body.
I'm looking for facial hair. Say if grandpa always wore his face clean shaven, if he's coming in with a whole bunch of stubble, people need to know that so that we can let them know, hey, they've got stubble. Do you want us to remove it by the time it's time for the funeral?
Is that because after death, the hair will continue to grow?
No, it actually doesn't. I don't know why.
Why is that? I've heard that.
I don't know why people say that.
Yeah.
So basically what happens is I guess it can give the illusion that the hair is still growing because the skin kind of like,
Oh.
but it absolutely does not grow. You need blood flow for your hair to grow. So, and you don't have that when you're deceased. So I just let them know if like they faced a lot of trauma. We're probably not gonna be able to have them looking like how you remember them looking, but this is what's here.
And then you're going to do what's called set the features. So you will close the eyes, you will get the mouth closed. Achieving a natural look with the mouth is really tough.
What happens to the face? How does it want to sit?
Well, the first thing is it's going to relax. And then you're going to see that it kind of falls into like whatever its normal resting pattern is. So I've really found that people who smile a lot in life, when you go to manipulate their mouth, like will naturally have something of a smile or a smirk. Whereas people who frown, like get this weird frown and like you can't fight it. I don't know what it is. There's what's called a needle injector, which is a piston and it shoots a metal brad into the upper maxillary bones and the lower mandible. And then you shut the mouth and you twist those wires.
And it holds it.
And it'll hold them closed. Yeah. Then the other way is you can do it with suture, with thread and a needle. Then you can go through the frenulum, so like under your lip, like this down here.
Yeah.
Then you go up through the septum. In the nose, like inside, and then you tie a bow.
That's not a present I want to open.
No. But you get a septum piercing out of the deal.
Oh, cool.
So
I can finally live my edgy lifestyle that I've always wanted.
Yeah, I mean, I could give you one after the show if you want.
Okay, you're pretty good at it. So you got some tool. You got some items.
Some items here.
Okay.
I got some eye caps.
So these are these are contact lenses.
Kinda. You're not gonna be doing much seeing, but if you look, you'll see like the
Oh shit.
Yeah, you can have those too. So those are put in the eyes to make sure that the eyes don't really like come open.
So it would be bad news if I put this in my eye right now.
Oh, absolutely. It'll like scrape up the insides of your eyelids. Those little spikes there are to pretty much keep the eyelid in place.
So do eyes naturally want to open up when you're deceased?
Depends on how you die. I wouldn't say they would naturally want to open, but sometimes they do.
What does embalming fluid do?
I think a lot of people get the impression that embalming fluid is this thing that's supposed to make a body last forever.
Embalming fluid temporarily.
Not permanent?
Not permanentely. Slows down the decomposition process of the human body.
But really the reason why we have embalming is like really it's a public health issue. If I were to leave a body alone in an unair-conditioned room for several days in a casket with no preparation and no like cooling, like I could end up with a great big bloated belly and green spots. One of the things that funeral directors really worry about is called tissue gas. It's this agent that builds up in a body, Clostridium perfringens, and it builds up and it makes the skin start to swell and it feels like Rice Krispies and it like crackles underneath. But the problem is it spreads and it smells so bad. So like we want to avoid those kind of things. So that's why like I'll get up at 3 a.m. and prepare a body because then I don't have to worry about, oh, when we have the funeral in 5 days, I don't have to worry about are they going to explode in the casket? Like, I don't have to worry about that.
So there's 4 different types of embalming. Arterial embalming, and that's when you raise an artery and you're pushing the fluid through the arteries that way. As you're pushing fluid in, blood is coming out of the vein.
Oh.
So you're not, I know people think like, oh, you've got to turn the body upside down and like.
Yeah, you don't put them on a meat hook upside down and let the blood drain?
No, I don't do any of that. No, we don't like gravity drain or anything like that. Back in the day, they used to have like a tilting table to like.
Oh, that's what those things are.
No more of that.
No more. Now you figured out, oh, you just push it in, it'll squirt out right next to it.
Pretty much. Once we realize that we've gotten like good distribution, I will Cavity embalm? Cavity embalming is when you take a really long pointed instrument and it's hooked up to suction and you make an incision in the belly and you suck out what's in their belly and you pretty much
like
like
undigested food.
undigested food, blood, fluid that may have built up. These days, I think they have like a machine for it, but the one I have is pretty old fashioned, so you have to hold it up while you're to drain the fluid into the body, and that's cavity embalming. After that, I like to put a diaper on people just because that butt juice is something else. Yeah.
I didn't even think about the butt juice.
They've got butt juice.
Even after you screw in the thing, there's butt juice comes out. still?
Sometimes butt juice leaks.
That's true. I have not thought about how my conscious awareness of my body is keeping my butt juice in right
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
It's just a continuous conscious effort to
now.
keep your butt juice in.
That's how I sum up my life.
Okay, yeah. I feel you, me too. I will then move on to makeup.
And are you doing all the makeup yourself?
Sometimes I need a little bit of help when there's a lot of trauma involved.
It's like the opposite of SFX makeup.
Yeah, pretty much. You're trying to cover all of that stuff.
Is it the same as any other kind of makeup? Like you just go to Sephora and...
So you can. In my experience, I don't, because when you are dead, obviously there's no warmth in the skin, and makeup for living people acts on the warmth in your skin. So sometimes you'll get like a really blotchy finish if you're using some more than others, but I just like to use mortuary makeup. I noticed that younger people are a tad bit easier to work with because their skin, it holds up a lot better than a really old, like an older person, because when you're younger, you've got, I guess, more elasticity to your skin, and that's a little bit easier to work with, but I would always rather work on an older, way older person than someone.
I know. Yeah, as you were
super
saying
young.
that, I was like, yeah, it might be easier to do the makeup, but it's more difficult emotionally.
The first time I embalmed was someone who was closer to my age and seemed like they would be, you know, a friend. And that really kind of hurt because I felt like, man, you know, that could have been me, that could have been my friends. And even though it wasn't, it still made me feel like, whew, you know, shit happens. And sometimes you are caught in the middle of that shit. And that really hit me because I'm like, yo, I need to start living like I'm gonna die.
The embalming is there to, protect the public, preserve the body until the funeral. And then two, because it is a preservative, it will kind of firm up the body a little bit as well. But so when I get someone's mouth properly set, it'll hold it there. It'll keep in that shape. So then I can say, yes, I've done this right at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
But at 5 days, grandma's also gonna look really nice. When her family comes, they can see grandma in a comfortable setting for them, and they can have kind of this last experience with grandma. And I can be in the background not having to worry about the practical matters of, goodness, is, grandma going to fall apart before we get to the cemetery.
That's so odd that you're bringing all this up and specifically saying grandma, because my grandma just passed about a month ago.
Really?
And I went to my first open casket funeral.
Give me the rest of the day. How did it go?
So, well, first there was the viewing the day before.
Yep.
And then the next day, and luckily all the emotions came out then.
Yeah, and there's some truth in that. It's good to have some time to just let it out.
It's odd because that first day, especially that first moment, but that first day, it feels like you are grieving the person. And then the next day, after almost processing it in the night, it feels like it is a representation of that person. It feels like a memory.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. I had a priest one time tell me it this way. He said, the night before a funeral is for looking backwards, but the day of the funeral is for looking forwards. And whether or not that's in a religious setting, I think it's utterly true. You have this time of reflection and remembering and mourning the loss of someone you love. But then there does come a time where you look forward to, okay, now what is the rest of my life going to look like without this person?
I feel like having this conversation would have been completely different if I had never seen someone that had been embalmed. And I didn't even think about the process. And you're sitting here breaking down
Yeah.
the process that actually went into preserving my grandmother.
Yes,
Now the memory,
sure.
the last memory that I have of her.
Right. Is it better that she was there looking peaceful, looking like grandma with her own clothes on? Or I hear a lot of people like, oh, what a waste. You know, why do that? It's like, it provides you time to plan. It provides you time to get to wherever the funeral is. But then probably the most important benefit of just giving family time to be with someone who looks like themselves rather than someone who is wasted by disease or actively decaying. Like I don't like that. I don't want that for the families I serve. My great hope is that at some point, if we've been ignoring death for a generation and sanitizing death for a generation, people will eventually realize like, this didn't work well. Let's try to do this better. And I'm not saying like everybody has to have like a Catholic funeral mass. Like that's what I'm gonna have. But what I really want to do is hopefully get people thinking about death, but also just thinking about like remembrance, about ceremony of some kind, about inconvenience. Like all these things are built into death and grieving, and just being okay with that.
Grieving is something that I think most people want to avoid because it's
Really
a
do.
lot.
It's hard.
Right? But once you grieve, you've grieved.
That's right.
And you can move on.
Yeah.
You can continue. You don't have that part of your brain that's constantly like, no, don't look at that. I don't think about that. We
Absolutely.
don't go there.
It's a hard thing. It's just hard, and that's okay.
And I think some people would assume that because you're a mortician, because you handle death nearly every single day, that you would be able to say, death is just a thing that happens and that's okay, and I have no emotion attached to it.
Yeah.
People think that you have emotion attached to death because you aren't familiar with it.
Right. Yeah. People think that morticians maybe are detached. And I would counter that the ones that are actually detached from the emotional side of it are not good at their job. You have to be connected to humanity in order to serve humanity. Like the majority of my time spent with any given death call, right, is going to be with the family. It's going to be with the husband or the wife or the kids or the grandkids. It's going to be with the family, serving them. And if you've lost your capacity to be empathetic, and you've lost your emotions around death, and you think it's just a meat sack, who cares? Like you're not going to be good at your job. It's been interesting having gone viral.
Yeah.
I get a lot of budding morticians. That's probably not something that's been said very often, but there are some who get it, right? Who get why a person does this job.
Yeah.
And there are some that are like, I don't like working with people, so I think it'd be a great job for me. No, this would be like, don't do this job if you're not good with people.
You work with people every single time that you handle.
Yes, constantly,
Even-
on the worst day of their life. Okay, like you have to be good with people.
Did you always want to become a mortician? Whew, I feel like this episode just needs a quick little intermission segment. So I can't go without thanking BetterHelp for sponsoring this episode. Therapy has been really beneficial in reframing my view of the world and of myself by allowing me to feel empathy for my younger self and therefore understand who I am today better. But therapy can be customized to whatever is right for you. It can be useful in helping with things like feelings of depression, anxiety, stress, insecurity, or whatever else you might need. BetterHelp screens all their therapists to ensure that they have experience and that they're certified and licensed, and provides customized therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist so you don't have to see anyone or speak over the phone if that's not something that you're comfortable with. And I feel like the most difficult part about getting into therapy is finding a therapist that you actually connect with, which is why BetterHelp offers a more affordable alternative to in-person therapy, where you can start communicating with your therapist in less than 48 hours. And those are just some of the reasons it's so cool that BetterHelp is sponsoring this episode, and they're giving I Spent a Day with viewers and listeners of the completely uncensored podcast version of the show 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/Padilla. That's betterhelp.com/Padilla. Now, back to the world of morticians. Did you always want to become a mortician? Did you always want to handle death?
Yes.
Always.
Always. Like, it's one of those things, like, I don't even have, like, some story about how, like, I realized that this is what I wanted to do. I just literally knew.
You were born, you're like, life, but death.
Yeah, exactly. That was me. I grew up in church.
Yeah.
And I grew up going to funerals. Like, there were a lot of older folks in the church.
Yeah.
And, like, it seemed like I was always going with my grandma to a funeral. And I always wondered, like, what goes into this? And then again, like with Dr. G, I used to watch the show, and that's kind of what got me into kind of, I guess, my curiosity about the different traumas and how trauma can affect how someone looks.
It was my senior year of high school. I started working at a funeral home. As a kid, I always wanted to be a priest. That's what I always wanted to
Really?
be.
That was
Yeah.
your goal?
That's what was always on my mind as a kid.
I guess priests are related to death in some way, right?
Kind of. Oh, absolutely. Priests
Yeah.
are, they're all about death in some
Yeah.
ways. And then once I realized, like, that's not my path. That's not what I'm supposed to do. It was like, now what? My godfather sent me a book by the poet and undertaker Thomas Lynch, and I realized, like, this, to me, at least the way I envision it, could be that middle ground. Like, I can be of service. I can have this kind of semi-religious existence, right? Like, I'm involved in kind of the metaphysical, the supernatural in some ways. So then I went to my local funeral home, and they're like, yeah, you can just, sure, like, we'll hire you to, whatever, just like dust caskets and vacuum floors.
You just wanted to be there?
Just be there. And that's the advice I would give to any aspiring mortician is, like, go get a job in a funeral home right now. Like, before you go to school, before you do anything, stop what you're doing, go get a job at a funeral home. Because you'll learn really quick if it's for you or if it's not. My 4th day there, my boss called me into his office and he's like, Victor, we've had a death. I was like, okay. And he's like, and you are going to go into the prep room and you're going to watch an embalming, which I don't think is strictly legal, by the way, but
Yeah, like no license, nothing?
yeah. But I went back there, and I was 18 at the time,
Yeah.
and it was an 18-year-old girl who died in a car crash, and she'd been autopsied. Okay, so that means that her chest cavity was cut open, all her organs were removed and were separated in a bag. So I, walk in and just this beautiful girl on the table. I mean, beautiful. And like, I still remember exactly what she looked like. I don't know what her name was. But so I walked in and the embalmer kind of got started and they cut open the sutures that are holding everything together, Opens up the cavity, pulls out all the viscera, all the guts, right? They're in a big bag. And I remember that her breast, like, flopped down as her chest was opened. And I remember that very distinctly. And I like ended up taking a chair and I just sat there and just kind of like zoned out. Because it is disturbing and it's hard to just get that like punch in the face with mortality like really early on. And then I made it through that day. And then the next day there was another death and it was an infant. So then I went and watched an infant get prepared. And honestly, like after that and whatever mess that made of my subconscious. After that, though, everything was kind of smooth sailings. If I can get through that, I can get through anything. And I have seen some disturbing things in my career, and they're not going to be the last. Like, I'm going to continue to see these, not just gruesome things, but just like ugly humanity and evil human actions. Like, I'm going to see these things, and I'm going to see things that are like heartbreakingly sad, and yet I'm going to have to either like power through these gruesome things, or I'm going to have to like be strong for a family that's experiencing these evils, these ugly things in the world. So I don't know. That was my kind of opening experience. I don't think I would. Maybe I would wish it on other mortician, like aspiring morticians, in some ways, because it really is formative.
It's like throwing you into the pool to learn how to swim.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
My dad did that to me. It was a little traumatizing, but I learned.
Yeah, that's right. And so it is. Yeah, it is a little terrifying and scary, but I think it's served me well.
So is there a schooling process to learn everything that you know?
Definitely. So you've got mortuary school, you've got technical colleges that have like mortuary programs.
Yeah.
Me personally, I say go to a specialized mortuary school if you know that's what you want to do. You get more hands-on clinical